Welcome, coaches. How are y'all doing? Hey, I hope you're excited. I'm in for a treat. I'm trying not to fanboy too hard right now with these two gentlemen right here with me. I have the great Kurt Warner and Dub Maddox. We're just going to jump right into it because if you don't know either of these two, you've been living under a football rock. So I am not going to get into it. First thing, Dub, for you, I just want to touch on. I reached out to both of y'all because y'all were talking about the anchor points and everything like that. I want to know, what is that? Could you explain that just a little bit for the people that really don't know what you're talking about? And you're on mute right now. I don't know how that.
We good now? All right. Anchoring is a vision strategy that experts in sports and in other domains use. It's something that a lot of research has been put into. And as a quarterback coach and as offensive coordinator, I'm always trying to find better ways to help my players. And it's something I stumbled upon a few years ago. And then with the COVID time off, I had a time to do a deep dive on that and was really intrigued by how elite athletes in multiple sports use this either innately or now it's coached in some other sports. So it's just a vision, like I said, a vision strategy to combine your central focus to your peripheral focus to see a bigger picture of what's occurring with movement.
Okay. And you're teaching your quarterbacks that?
Correct.
Okay, awesome. Now, Kurt, I want to get what's your thought process back there as a quarterback? Like, what are you going through when you're doing this?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting, and Coach Dub and I talked a little bit a couple of days ago just about this idea, and I believe the anchoring part of it. There's always a part when you're playing anything or doing anything, where there's more than just one thing that you're looking at, where you're always trying to expand your field of vision as much as possible and get a feel for, outside of, your direct path or what you're focused on, what else can you see? How much can you see? And so, there's a part of that I fully subscribe to without question. I was still trying to figure out, as we were talking, this idea of anchoring to space as opposed to anchoring to a man. I'm very much, or at least the way that I played, the way that I've always taught is I'm always trying to make it a defender read and find a player to focus on. But without question, I want to be able to feel and have a field of vision that goes beyond that and feel other players or feel my receivers coming into windows as I'm focused on that one particular player. So I think there's things that I did, things that I believe in that tie into what Coach is talking about. But we talked a lot about that idea of trying to anchor to space, which is an interesting concept to me, and one I still don't fully understand. How you coach that and teach that. But the anchoring idea, for me, anchoring on a defender and seeing and opening my field of vision is something that I think all athletes and specifically all quarterbacks want to be able to do.
Okay. And I'm going to be completely honest. I fully don't grasp that as well. Dub, could you walk me through that? Like, how do you go about teaching that and helping your quarterback see that whole vision? Because I know, are you kind of talking like a basketball, like a point guard? Like I can see everything, kind of like peripheral, or is that something else?
Yeah, well, again, it's something that has occurred through failures in my coaching early on. I start out with all my quarterbacks teaching single defender reads even today. That doesn't change. They got to learn to process, one defender before they can, see space and bring other guys in into that field of view. So again, we start with one single defender key read. The issues I've incurred in coaching quarterbacks, and a lot of this doesn't show up until games, because the element here is the trap that I would fall into is I would focus on a single defender key read, let's say on a smash concept, and we get into the game and pressure hits. And I think that's one of the things that we coaches don't understand fully is, are the strategies and the methods I'm using to teach my quarterback, are they going to hold up in the reality of the game? And a lot of times we don't figure that out until we get into that week 2 or 3 pressure pack moment. And when the adrenaline hits and the cortisol hits the body, my eyes start to constrict and I get cognitive tunneling. And that's what was happening to my players. They were going blind to space around them and making bad decisions. And so I have to find something to help them maintain that broad focus view to see those danger players, for example, on slant routes. So, we would get, a cover 1 sim pressure. They got 6 guys walked up, 2 guys in the A gaps, cover 1. We got a slant call to the single receiver. what do I tell my quarterback? If our X receiver can win inside, you're going to single defender key read that corner. If he can win inside, you're going to throw the slant. And what happens? They drop, the linebacker, they drop the end into that window, and we don't see him, and we throw the interception. Those are some things that were happening to me, and I didn't have a method or a process. How can I get my kid to see the bigger picture? And then researching on this anchoring strategy was something that I felt could help my kids, not miss those danger players per se on those particular situations.
Okay. And okay, I like that because that happens to me. Kurt, how do you do that in your thought process, like to get them to realize that and see it?
For that same scenario, what I would do is that if we're in a single receiver situation where I got man-to-man on the backside slant, I'm going to come off and, again, depending on protections and all that stuff. But if I'm worried most about the will linebacker, I'm going to come off, and as I'm dropping, my eyes are going to initially see that will linebacker for my initial step to see if he bounces out or he attaches. And that's all I need to know is that initial movement by him. Then my eyes are going to take me right to the corner, and I'm going to let go because I'm not going to need to know if my receiver beats the corner until I'm ready to throw the football. So for me, I would anchor my eyes on that will linebacker for that first step just to get a sense of, is he turning and running out into a position where he can take away the slant? Is he giving me maybe the second window on the slant if he is running out there that way? Or is he holding to the inside where now I have absolutely no worries and bang, my eyes are out there on the slant corner and making the throw?
Okay.
And I think the thing that anchoring solves, and this is from the research, is that it allows you to do the same thing without having to make a scan. And so what we're trying to do, what experts do in other sports, what they found is they eliminate the saccades that they make, the fixation points from one place to another. Anchoring allows them to take one of those out so you can see essentially 2 or 3 guys without having to go from 1 to 2 to 3. And this concept is, I don't know if you guys juggle, but if you've ever learned to juggle, you cannot take your eyes from one ball to the second to the third and be able to keep that rhythm and be able to get your hands to find the balls. You get lost in that shuffler, that scan. So what they teach you in juggling is they teach you to anchor your eyes on what they call the zenith. And the zenith is the top curve of where the ball arcs. And if you can anchor your eyes at that point where those balls are going to come into your field of view, your anchor point, your periphery will pick up where that ball's at, and what your brain will tell your hand where to go, and you can catch the ball without having to move your eyes back and forth and find each ball. So that's kind of what the anchor point concept does for the quarterbacks, is if you know the critical space to look at, where your cap threats are, you can essentially anchor your eyes at that point and pick up so much information, I think, that we don't realize that our brains are able to process. And in my world, in the high school world, I think it's needed because the game is evolving for us where we're not seeing static coverages anymore. I'm seeing 5 across at 8 yards, and you have no idea if it's going to be 2, 3 cloud, 2 invert. I mean, it's like it'll blow your mind, some of the stuff that we're seeing. And you even see it in Texas. Like, for example, we'll have a team next year that they'll show 3 variations of cover 2. So let's say you're on the left hash, you have a nickel linebacker, you have a corner, you have a field safety. They're going to play standard cover 2, like we all probably think of it. They're going to play 2 invert where the safety rolls down to the flat and the corner plays the half. And then they're going to play cover 2 where they take the nickel guy, he plays the flat, and then the safety plays the wall, and the corner drops back and plays the middle half. So we have to be able to we have to focus our eyes on critical space to process all those movements. I can't tell my quarterback when 5 DBs are across the field at 7 yards, focus on the flat defender here. I have no idea who it's going to be. I have to have a process to teach my quarterback post-snap how to see who's coming into that flat space and then make that critical decision. So I think the NFL game's a little bit more like, when talking to Kurt, it was cool to hear, how he could know based on one movement of one player what everybody's doing. And I think, when you're getting paid to play football and everybody's going to do their job, I think that's a lot easier. In our world, we have no idea what those 11 guys are going to do. I mean, I think, Ron, you can speak to that, right?
I can, but just do that. Yeah. I know, Kurt, you coach quarterbacks, and I'm sure Arizona has freaking unbelievable guys as well. How did you teach? Because your son's doing a really good job as well. How did you teach your quarterbacks what to do on their plays while you were doing that?
Yeah, I mean, so just to kind of counter what Coach is talking about, or speak to that same scenario, is that for me, what I teach is understanding what the concept is first. And so, for instance, if we're running curl flat, let's just say, to the same scenario that Coach Dub is talking about, is that I'm going to tell my quarterbacks initially right off the bat to look at the corner, because to me, curl flat read to me is a corner off read. And so all I want them to initially see the corner. If the corner's in an off position, you find the next player to the inside and get your eyes there and you read that, because he's got to take curl to flat. He's got to take that hook to flat area if the corner's off. If I look at the corner and the corner stays rolled up, I know I'm not even reading that side and we're processing to the next play. So that's how I would counter that. Instead of trying to see a whole bunch of different guys, I want my guys to know, oh, this particular part of my concept is good against this look. So I don't know what all those safeties are going to do. You just tell me if the corner's off. If the corner's off, you can read that side every single time if you want, and you just got to find the flat defender, which, again, will be that next guy inside, you would presume, in most situations. Coach Dub, I just want to ask you a question about that initial part. So the idea of anchoring to space, at the moment before they throw, so they've got to anchor to space, and then their eyes go to their receiver or the defensive back or something at that point. So is that kind of the case? Is we're looking and we're anchored to space, and then boom, we get to our guy before we throw. We're not throwing it off of that anchoring. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, we talked about that, and I think, for me, people set up the progressions differently. I have a rhythm route, which NFL calls alert. Something that we can hit off the last step. We have a read space and we have a rush space. We have three essentially workspaces that we can manage or juggle on most of our concepts, not all of them, but most of them. And so, whatever my rhythm space is, that rhythm route could be a seam, could be a glance route, could be a spot route, anything that can break open in 1.8 seconds or less. I need to decide as fast as I can whether that space is viable or not, so I can get my eyes ahead to the ancillary routes in that progression, the read route and the rush route. And so the anchoring concept helped our quarterbacks make a faster decision and not hang on to the rhythm too long. And then now their eyes and their feet are late for the rest of the routes within the progression. It allowed us to speed up our progression reading and not stay on it too long. And so I think that's where it's used the most for me in that.
I like that. And actually, this is a question. Coaches, if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. It's not very often that I have two quarterback guys in here because old school linebacker, really don't know quarterback. Learn that, and also again, I thanked y'all off air. Thank y'all for coming on here because I love having the two different stuff. My son just ran right up here. But one of the coaches wanted to know, how do you get your quarterbacks to have better pocket presence, and how do you eliminate happy feet? And Kurt, I would like for you to answer that first, if you don't mind, because I this is something I struggle with my quarterback, and I was wondering if you had any tips for me and for the other coaches that are watching right now.
Well, I mean, I think there's always a level of pocket presence and understanding and athleticism that is almost impossible to teach. That guys have to be able to have a feel for those things naturally to some degree. But I'm also a believer that a lot of that stuff, the happy feet, and I always say the faster your feet are going, the faster your mind is going. So oftentimes I can look at a quarterback, and when I see him moving fast and his feet moving fast in the pocket, that's usually letting me know he's not really sure what he's seeing and his mind's going really, really fast. So for me, I'm always trying to simplify the game for my guys. And so again, the different theories that we have, for me, I'm trying to get them to know which defender they're looking at on any particular play. Soon as you can get your eyes to that defender and that defender gives you a read, now there's no reason to panic. There's no reason to worry about anything. Get the ball out off of your read. And so that, to me, is the greatest way to get guys to relax, is by getting them to know who they're reading, getting their eyes to that guy. Now they get to read as fast as they possibly can. What I see a lot of times with guys is their eyes are all over the place and they get to their reads late or they get to their space late. And when that happens, now they don't really know what they're seeing. They haven't been able to lock in on the guy and see, did that guy move? Did he turn his hips? Did he run out? What's his depth? All of that stuff. So my goal is always, I want to try to simplify the game as quickly as possible for my quarterbacks. They can find that guy. That guy's got to do something. If I'm doing my job right as a coordinator in designing a play that attacks somebody, as you know, really any play should attack somebody in a zone. That's what attacking a zone is, overloading a zone. If my guys can get to that defender or those two defenders that go against three guys or however that works, they can get their eyes to that guy. That guy's going to tell them if I've designed the play right. And now they can get the ball out on time and they're not wondering, okay, what am I doing? Any quarterback that doesn't know what he's doing naturally is going to lend itself to lack of pocket presence or moving too fast or getting happy feet. That's just natural. So I want to simplify that process so they don't have to overthink too much.
Okay. And Dub, what about you? What's your thought process on happy feet for a quarterback?
The best drill that we've done is a blitz drill, and it's a live blitz drill. And there's a reason why the Navy SEALs train with live ammo. It's because you have to create, the reality of what they're going to face on a given night, on our game night. And so one of the things we'll do is I'll allow the defense, we'll get the number good on good, allow the defense to put 7 guys up. They can bring whatever blitz they want. So the defensive guys love it because they can work on all their blitzes. And, generally I'll use 5-man protections. We'll use some 6, but I want the quarterback to start to learn where his hots are and understand his protection and how to get the ball out quickly versus a live pocket. And so we'll script, 8 plays. We can get this done really quickly in like 5 minutes. And we're not allowing the receivers to run the route just so we can get through it fast because I want it high tempo, high speed, so he has to process quickly. So we'll have just receivers or coaches just standing in the spots where the hot routes would be. Now, the running back will be involved in this. Usually he's free release, so he would be one. So you might just need another coach to be the other hot, however many you have in that concept. So we'll call the concept no huddle tempo, get up there. Defenses bring whatever they want, and we film that. And that's been one of the best tools. It's amazing to see the growth for my guys in just a few weeks after we do that, a couple times a week. Early on in the season is when we really introduce it and do it heavily. But that live blitz drill has been just paid huge dividends for my guys on eliminating the happy feet, knowing where their hots are, getting the ball out on time, and really getting the game to slow down for them from that standpoint.
Okay, that's nice. I like that. Another question that we had from the coaches is, and Dub, since Kurt had this one, you'll have this one. How do you teach your quarterback to take a little bit of velocity off the ball without losing his mechanics?
Yeah, well, this is a big one. You have to learn how to bleed power out, right? And so I'll see this a ton on like cover 0 throws or man throws, learning how to throw that short fade, or it could be like a seam, cover 0 is a seam down the middle or a post. And quarterbacks get so amped up, their drilling's flowing, and they know they've got their guy, and they overthrow him, and they don't take into consideration you're speeding your footwork up, right? And so the ball's coming out quicker. But that receiver, even if he's the fastest guy on your team, can only get so far downfield. So you have to learn to bleed power out with art to get him time to clear from that man defender. So one of the things that we use is we actually it's teaching bad mechanics. We teach him to over rotate and kind of fall out of the throw essentially. So, most times we don't want our quarterbacks elevating up and locking the front leg out, and we don't want their right foot spinning around. But that is a bleed out mechanism that guys can do, and they can kind of fall out. So a lot of times on those throws, you're getting man pressure, could be cover 0 pressure. So you're taking a hit. So we kind of practice falling away, elevating, extending, and kind of over rotating. It's hard to demonstrate here with just explaining it, but I think learning how to bleed power out is a critical component for those man types of throws where you're wanting to shorten the fade to get the drop around 15 to 18 yards, or that, cover 0 seam or post around, 25 yards. I think that's something that's kind of a finer mechanic that you want to work to after they establish a base throw, but I think it's something that's very needed in those situations.
Okay. And Kurt?
I would just say that to me, it's all about proper throwing mechanics. To me, proper throwing mechanics are throwing with your core and being able to create power with your core and not power with your arm. And that's what causes the issues that you're talking about right here, is when a guy feels like he's got to make the throw. I got to throw the ball 25 yards with my arm. There's only one way to get it there. I have got to bring velocity with my arm, and there's no way to have touch and velocity coming from one. You can't bring your arm this fast to get it 25 yards and then somehow slow it down to get touch. So the idea becomes I engage my core, I create the power with my core, and I follow through with my arm. And so my arm is not doing the work. And that allows me the ability to slow down my arm. And so now I use this term. It's got to be firm but soft. Can you throw it firm but soft? And my son, who's a quarterback, tells me all the time, Dad, that's not physics. It doesn't work like that. It can't work like that. It can. And I show him daily how it works like that. So my ball has velocity, but it has touch. It's soft. It's not heavy. It's not fast, because I'm creating the power. I'm eliminating my arm. I'm shortening my stroke. So the power comes from my core. The follow through comes from my arm to be able to have the accuracy, but I'm able to lift and move my shoulders. I'm able to tip my shoulders to get, that touch, or to get the air on it, to be able to drop it into a guy, because I'm creating that with my core. And that is one of the things that few quarterbacks are ever taught, that they don't. A lot of guys don't understand it. It's a hard thing to teach, because, I can tell a quarterback to do it, but it's hard to know exactly how much of his core he's engaged. So I'd work a lot of different drills where I'm trying to force my guys to take their arm out of it, force them to throw it a certain distance without having their arm engaged. That to me is the whole key when you're talking about firm but soft, or talking about throwing it with touch. We don't want to try to take something off with my arm at the last minute and flip it up to a guy and think that that's touch. Touch is power with core, taking something out of your arm, but still having a violent follow through. And again, as Coach Dubb said, it's tough to try to explain here, but it's also one of the reasons that, as you know, Coach, that I created QB Confidential. There's a whole on the field section where I talk a lot about the mechanics and that aspect of things, and being able to engage from your feet up through your core and allowing your arm to follow, so we can eliminate as much of the arm as we possibly can.
All right. Yes. And both of the coaches' links to what they do, the QB Confidential and the R4 system, are in the description. And when you come back and watch this, because I know that y'all are coaches, it'll be in the very first pinned comment, both of their stuff. Unbelievable stuff. I have another one that I would like from you, Kurt. First off, from Coach, do either of you teach full field reads? Or are you combining concepts front side, back side? Like, are you saying like a full progression, or do you have two different things, like maybe a man on one side and a zone on the other?
Yeah, I'm always teaching, and when we say full field, reads, that to me, the question is saying the same thing.
Okay.
Are we saying a pure progression read where it is always 1 to 2 to 3 to 4? But I'm always combining concepts as much as I possibly can. I want my quarterbacks, just like Coach Dubb was talking about, if I'm seeing, 5 safeties across or 5 DBs across, and I have no idea what coverage I'm going to get, they can roll the 3, they can roll the 4, they can roll the 2. I need to make sure that my quarterback has answers against everything. And so the way I'm always trying to design things is, okay, this is your middle open beater, this is your middle close beater, this is your roll side, this is your corner offside. And so that's how the primary offense that we run is designed. So again, I don't really know when he's talking about combining or full field reads. I look at that as a full field read, is that you've got to see the whole field and understand, what you're getting. Now, as I was saying earlier, if this side is a corner off read and the corner's off, I don't care what anybody else is doing. You can read that side. So it's simplifying in that manner, but I always want to make sure my quarterbacks have options. And of course, within every offense, I think you have some pure progression reads. For instance, deep post, deep over, and a flat. Everybody's got that in their offense in some capacity. And that read is primarily going to stay the same no matter what coverage you have. You might have to look at a different guy, read a different guy, but you're still kind of reading that side of the field and that high-low off of that. So we do have concepts like that are in our offense, but I would say primarily I do design it, split the field in half and say, hey, this is your beater against this. This is your beater against that. If I'm not sure what a defense is running, of course, if I know what the defense is going to run every time, which sometimes we do in high school, I'll give them something that beats that on both sides. But the idea is, hey, I want my quarterback to have an answer against every possible coverage we could see.
Okay, great. And Dub?
Yeah, so I think I on all my plays, I want the ability to attack the full field. Now, we might delete a side pre-snap based on those indicators that we're talking about. But again, I don't want to get stuck. I don't want to get pigeonholed into an area where they come out in something different, or they're going to do something post-snap, and my quarterback doesn't have the optimal answer there. So I think in all of our play calls, we have the ability to attack every part of the field. Now, are we going to give our quarterback the freedom to scan the whole field post-snap? Depends on the play. Like I said, we'll delete a side or eliminate a side or an area based on specific game plan indicators.
Okay, great stuff. Now, this is something I'm really curious about, because both of y'all come at the quarterback position on a different stuff. So this is something football. The one thing I love about YouTube is just the screen names you get when people come up instead of the real names. But Dub, since Kurt went first last time, can you talk about what you're teaching your quarterback to go through his pre-snap process when they come up to the line of scrimmage? Do they have a certain thing that they're doing every single time, or do they have different things depending on what they see pre-snap, like safeties or anything? Or what are you teaching your quarterbacks for pre-snap?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're always going to, start with protection. I mean, we've got to make sure, we got a protection is solid. Our quarterback knows where his weakness of that is, where his hots are. So we put a lot of time and investment in understanding that. We put a lot of onus on our guys on being able to adjust protections. We see so many good defenses here and so many, blitzes from both areas and ways to mix it up that, if we stay in the same protection for a game, we're going to get absolutely annihilated. So again, that's something we have to put a lot of time into. So that's going to be the first thing. Next thing is we're going to have, kind of a basic scan we'll teach, preseason. Now these scans will adjust based on the play, but the boundary safety essentially is the key player on the chessboard that we have to identify first. And we have to understand that, he is linked to the field safety, to the nickel guy, all the way across to the will linebacker. And essentially how he moves, those other guys are going to adjust for the most part. So he's a big tell for us and a big, accelerator for knowing, where rotation's rolling, kind of what the defense is doing. Obviously, corners can disguise a lot better, so they can bait you into certain things. So I really try to focus on that boundary safety, making a scan around to the field safety, to the nickel guy. Is he in or outside the apex? Is he a box player, or a flat player? And that's kind of, just some basic things. Now we'll do some other things, but I mean, just protection. I think, kind of that inner core four guys, what they're doing is something that's standard, every play for us.
Okay. And Kurt, what are you teaching your quarterbacks?
Yeah, I mean, I think start similarly to Coach Dub in regards to just understanding the box, understanding, really where your issues are as a quarterback. So I just want them to again, it's kind of a quick snapshot of, because most of the time, you hear these NFL teams and 52 is the mic or whatever. 99% of the time, exactly who the mic is. But I want my guys to recognize that, to recognize what the box count is, where the issues are. Then from there, I have my guys go out to the corners. I want them to see the corners pre-snap, because so much of what we do and what I try to teach is so much is predicated on whether a corner is on or off. It's pressed or not. Now, obviously, if he's pressed, that doesn't mean he has to stay pressed. But normally, if a corner's off, you don't see a lot of corners sit 7-8 yards off and then come running up to the line of scrimmage. So I want them to know if the corner's on or off. And then, like everybody's going to tell you, on the snap, the safeties are the ones that have to get to where they need to be. The corners can sit there and bait you and hold their position because they're there. They don't have to cover as much ground across the field. And so, of course, right before the snap or on the snap, eyes are on the safety, to see where he's going, because that's the tell on whether he's running back to the middle of the field, he's running back to, deep half or holding his position. So we're going to get there right when the ball is snapped and let them really tell us where they're going.
Okay, good stuff. Now, here's a question for you, Kurt. I'm a brand new coach. I come into a program that, let's say, they haven't thrown the ball that much, and I want to change that. what do you think the first two things I should do with my quarterbacks to get them ready to throw the ball and set them up for success for actually passing and being one of those good quarterbacks instead of just, I'm not saying that they're bad quarterbacks for handing the ball off all the time, but one that's going to start throwing the ball a little bit more?
Well, I mean, again, it's always going to start with technique first. I mean, you want to make sure that your guys, can make the kinds of throws that you're going to ask them to make, and teach them the proper technique with that. One of the things that I will always say is I don't care what you end up being during the season. In this day and age, there are so many teams that run primarily shotgun. And that obviously goes everywhere from high school all the way up to the pro level. I'm a firm believer, and I still do it to this day, whether we're going to be a shotgun team or not during the season. I start every one of my quarterbacks under center because I believe our routes are designed, at least in most people's offenses, our routes are designed for the footwork of the quarterback to tie into the footwork of the receiver. And so I want to develop a clock in the head of my quarterback to understand what the timing is on all of those routes I'm going to ask him to throw. And if you don't ever develop that clock in your head and you just throw somebody in shotgun, where I don't believe there's true footwork in shotgun, I don't believe a three-step drop, under center calculates to a one-step drop or a punch step in the gun. I don't believe a five-step correlates to a three-step and vice versa. I believe there's a certain timing with everything from under center, and you develop that clock in your head, and then you've got to use that clock to be able to develop the timing and make those different throws and get set in the right manner and in the right timing when you're in gun. And so that's another thing that I would do is I would start every one of your quarterbacks under center to get them to understand timing, to learn timing, to connect the footwork and the timing of the receivers with what they're doing. And then, going back to what we talked about before is the understanding of this concept is good against this. This is who you're reading, and starting to understand what their ability is to be able to see and understand things, which would go a long ways to determining what we could do from a passing standpoint. Even if we wanted to pass, how complicated can we get? How simple do we have to be? How do we have to, use some smoke and mirrors sometimes to be able to become a passing team without having a quarterback that can truly see the full field? So those are just a couple of the things that I would start with originally. If I'm going to try to take somebody or try to take a system and become a passing system, I got to figure out exactly what we're capable of doing.
Okay. And what about you, Dub? Because I think you've actually faced this before, haven't you?
Yes. Yeah. So I learned from failure. The first thing that I would do and recommend to a coach now is I'm going to find out what are my physical abilities of my quarterback without any coaching from myself. So like at day one, and we do this every off season now, or every spring, I should say, when we get our quarterbacks is we test their route range. And so what I have a series of tests. We use the goalpost, and we're going to measure, what's their max distance that they can get on different route spaces. So we put him on a left hash, and I would see, what's his route range for a rhythm corner to the field. The rhythm corner by a slot receiver that's on the hash, that's a 36-yard throw if you're throwing a three ball. And so can my quarterback throw the ball 36 yards with three ball trajectory? And so I think that's something that I didn't do early on in my career. I'm running concepts and using splits that take my quarterback outside his route range. And so we have a checklist of routes, and I have this detailed, Ron, how we drill it in the book, the Capology book, because I think it's something that is very helpful to guys, but how we test it. And so it eliminates me not having to get into week 3 or 4, realizing, we can't run this concept. We can't throw a field corner this year. So what are we going to do if we still need it? Well, maybe we need to reduce it and run it out of a snug split, or maybe we have to sprint out to it, or maybe we have to eliminate it altogether. And I think, the bigger route range my quarterback has, obviously, the more spaces on the field we're going to attack, the more we can spread them out, the deadlier we're going to be. But I think you have to kind of find out what are your raw materials at first. And the earlier you can do that, like in the spring, that gives me time. Okay, in 2 months, can I get my guy with work to extend that route range to where we can throw these? So it allows me to see where his baseline is. And then in whatever time I have before the season, can I get him there? So we can decide before the season happens if we can or cannot do that, not wait till mid-season.
Okay, that's a great question. I mean, answer, and also it kind of ties into what a coach asked me to ask y'all. Is I have a quarterback and he's having a difficult throw throwing the out, the speed out, whatever. What can he do to help his quarterback make that throw? Well, Kurt, what do you?
I mean, again, to me, it all goes back to mechanics. It all goes back to, because again, I look at all these high school kids, and they're in the weight room, they're working out, they're able to lift weights. When it comes to squatting and doing those kinds of things, they can squat more than their body weight. There's power there, and the bottom line becomes being able to connect that power, to your throwing motion to be able to make those kinds of throws. But too often, guys don't know how to throw, and they don't understand it. And so they're trying to make that throw with their arm, and they can't do it. And so, it's a tough question to answer, because you would have to go back and teach them mechanics and create the power through their core, through their feet. And I believe most kids that are going to play high school quarterback can throw an out, if they're properly taught and they're able to engage the proper strength and the core strength to be able to do it. But, that becomes one of the hard things that I realize at the high school level, and especially not being a full-timer, is that you're limited with time to be able to get these kids and start them with technique. As Coach Dubs, you're teaching them offense, you're teaching them timing, you're teaching them run game, you're teaching them blitz pickup. You don't have as much time to individually take every kid and go, okay, we got to start from day one. We got to build this foundation. And so you can make these throws. It takes a lot of time to do that. And a lot of kids, never learn the right way, the proper way early on. So now you're just playing catch up and you're trying to find time to do that. But again, that to me is why I created my platform, because I think it's a means for these kids or even coaches to say, hey, here's a way to build your foundation to learn some of these things on your own, because we don't always have that time as a coach. I mean, we can get up to the NFL level, and the amount of time that coaches spent working on my individual technique was very limited, because we had so much other stuff that we're doing. And so that would be, where I would start is getting them to the fundamentals of throwing a football and using the correct power.
Okay. And also, Coach Dub, before you answer it, I put both Kurt's QB Confidential and Dub's R4 system. They're in the chat. Check them out. They're both phenomenal. And Dub, how would you help this court? Like, what would you say to that coach that asked that question?
And we're talking about the speed out.
Yeah, like I have a quarterback. He can't really get it there. What can that coach do to help his quarterback out?
Yeah, so, a lot of this is some simple, things to identify with the lower body. You'll find out when quarterbacks throw a quick out, whether it's right or left, the first thing is their hips aren't aligned in the hallway that they're throwing into. So I'm using the hallway as just a frame of reference to visualize the window that you're throwing that speed out. So what I found is, and this is something that LSU did a lot of research on 2 years ago with Joe Burrow. They had an eye specialist come in, and he spent a year with the team. And so they did a lot of research with ocular dominance. And what they found is that, most people are right eye dominant. So what does that mean for a quarterback? Well, when I'm throwing routes to the right, my right eye picks up that space faster. And so initially your eyes are telling your brain, hey, we're there. We can see the route. We can see the space. And so your body starts to shut down early. And so you'll see a lot of quarterbacks, their hips are still pointed down the middle of the field or maybe slightly to the right, but their hips aren't all the way rotated around to the sideline where the route's breaking. And that's when your feet and your hips are out of alignment. Obviously your power's not aligned in that space, so you have some drain issues, and now your arm's trying to write a check it can't cash on its own. And so I think that's one of the things that I saw with all my guys. And when I do my camps, I see it show up, camp after camp, with kids throwing out breaking routes of not learning how to rotate their hips around and getting that hallway set. And one of the factors that could cause that could be that ocular dominance, where most people are right eye dominant. When you throw to the left, the same thing occurs, but it's the other way. You tend to, underset to the right. You tend to overset to the left. And so your right eye has to come around further when you're throwing the quick out to the left to pick it up. And so now your hips are set too far outside. And so your ball will either sail early as you open up early, high, and right, or you might miss left. But again, so I think that's some things that that I had to learn how to build in with my quarterbacks when throwing the quick out, is just making sure they have an awareness of the placement of their hips and their feet with the route, whether they're throwing it right or left. So we spent a lot of time emphasizing the lower body, fixing that first, and that generally takes care of the issues with the quick out. And like Kurt was saying, it's the lower body and the core, and I agree with that. And so I think that's some of the things that have helped get my guys set up better to throw the quick out.
Okay, great answer. Now here's me being. I want to ask both of y'all. I've dove into the mental aspect. Like, I have some quarterbacks throughout my coaching career that have really gotten down on themselves when they do something bad or they just get defeated. And I know both of y'all have been in big time games. Kurt, in the Super Bowl, that's huge. Dub, you've been on the sideline in state championships at the highest level at Oklahoma. Dub, I'm going to go with you on this one first. How do you teach your quarterback first not to get down on themselves when they are having mistakes? And then how do you get them prepared for like those big games so they're not all tied up and then they get all nervous and then they just totally crap the bed?
Well, the first thing I learned early on in coaching is you can't coach every player the same. Some guys you can be harder on, you can put more pressure, you can challenge them more. Some you have. So, I mean, it's really, learning the personality and the skill sets and the strengths of our quarterbacks. I have our quarterbacks take a strength finder test. There's a Street Finder book that gives you your 5 biggest strengths. And that's a tool that has really helped me navigate the best way to handle this kid, the best way to challenge him. So I make sure I don't mess him up. I mean, that's the main thing. There's some of my quarterbacks in my past that I had to go back and apologize to for how I handled them. And I didn't handle them the best way. So I think playing this position is the toughest in any sport in the world, and being able to keep poise and handle pressure is a number one non-negotiable. You got to be able to handle pressure and not get too high, not get too low. So how do you do that? The best way for me that has helped my guys is you got to focus on others instead of yourself. When you start focusing on your mistake, what you're not getting, what people are saying about you, that's when things usually go south. You've got to get your mind and your heart off of yourself, and you got to get on your teammates. Your left tackle needs you. He needs you to get rid of the ball quicker. Your receiver needs you to get the ball to you. Your running back needs you to do a great job on the bootleg fake. So focus on other people in your huddle is usually the best way. Focus on your teammates. Don't focus on your mistakes is something that really I think has helped my guys.
Okay. And Kurt, what about you? How did you do it? I mean, mentally tough already, your story and everything, which, by the way, can't wait to see it on Christmas, man. I can't wait. But what are you teaching your quarterbacks and everything to be mentally strong?
Well, I mean, I think you're always talking to them about your experiences and the understanding that, you can't play this game perfect, is that nobody plays this game perfect. And I even talk to my guys and my son quite often is that I kind of hate that word perfect because we get this mindset of having to play perfect or wanting to be perfect, and it's impossible. And we all know it's impossible. So I want to just throw that out and tell these guys, hey, we just want to be excellent at what we do. But when they're going through those phases, the first thing I want to do is I don't ever lose confidence in them. And I want them to know that. So if they throw an interception, I'm going to come back and let them throw again. I'm going to put the ball in their hands. And now I may, change some things, make it some easier throws, but I'm going to get it back in his hands to go, hey, know that I have confidence in you. Because I think that's one of the hardest things and one of the ways you can kind of get into a hole if you're dealing, if you're wrestling with, that mental ability to handle things personally, is when somebody else gets down on you. If you're feeling down on you and then somebody else or your coach, says something to you like that, now you just start going down and down and down and down. So I'm always trying to lift them up going, hey, yeah, you made a mistake. I made a million mistakes, but I still believe in you, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to show that. I'm not going to go away from them and just hand the ball off 10 straight times and those kinds of things. But just kind of a funny, quick story is, my son, they have a way of always humbling you, as your kids do. And I remember just a couple of years ago that, my son came up to me and he goes, Dad, you won the NFL MVP throwing 22 interceptions. And I remember having to look back at him and say, hey, I won the MVP around those 22 interceptions. So the point of it is that, yeah, I made some mistakes, and you can make some mistakes. You're going to make some mistakes at this position. It's what you do around those mistakes that dictate everything. That's going to dictate the kind of player you are, the kind of success that we have, because I don't expect you to play perfect. I know you will not play perfect, and I can live with that. But I want you to play confident that, hey, when I make that mistake, I'm going to come back and give us 2 more plays that are going to make up for that, and that's how we're going to have success. So, I'm fortunate to be able to share my experience that, I had plenty of games where, people just look, man, that was awful. And, yeah, sometimes you play awful, but you don't let that, carry into, one game where I threw 5 interceptions. I promise you I'm not going to do that the next week, because you have to play with that level of confidence even when you make a mistake or when things go against you, because they always will at the quarterback position. You pick any great quarterback you want, and they've had those games. So you got to try to instill that in your guy. But it is a hard thing, but you're always trying to lift them up and let them know, hey, I still believe in you. Your guys still believe in you. I try to get their teammates to encourage them, because sometimes it's not always about the coaches. They want to hear their guys, lift them up. Their guys be on them, because that's kind of the easiest thing at the high school level. I notice, somebody makes a mistake and everybody gets down and everybody's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, we need those guys to lift them up, and that's where they get their confidence as much as anything.
Okay. And I want to ask you this, because as a coach, from your perspective, what should I say to a player when they do throw an interception? Like, should I come immediately to them and talk to them, or should I do what you said and go to their teammates, but hey, go talk him up, and then I'm going to come around and after you talk him up and then talk to him, because then he will kind of calm down a little bit and not be so defensive of that mistake he just made?
I think Coach Dub made a great point. Is you got to understand the kind of player you have first. I've had some quarterbacks that I have no problem, that I know they're going to shake it off, and I'm going to go right to them and hey, what did you see? What did you miss? And let's talk through it so it doesn't happen again. And then there's other guys that you say, hey, I'm going to go pat them on the butt. I'm going to go encourage them. I'm not going to say anything to them, right? I'm just going to go play, and I'm going to I'm going to forget about that. I'm not going to harp on that, and we're going to move on to the next play. And then there's even other guys that I'll go to another teammate and say, hey, go lift up your buddy. He made a mistake. He's feeling down. You go lift him up. I need you to encourage him and get him up and get him cheering for his guys. So everybody is different. And so there's, you really have to have the pulse on what your guys need to be able to get back on track.
Okay. And I actually do that. I go to my quarterback's best friend or the partners, and I'm like, hey, go talk them up. I don't want to say anything. Go cheer them up and do all that. All right. Awesome. Now I have a question. Coach TR has it, and this is for you, Dub. And then I want to get your thought process on this as well, Kurt. What's the key teaching point when you're teaching your quarterbacks to move from route in the progression? How do you teach them what cap space looks like? I know you dive deep in all 3 of your books and in your courses and your mini workshops and all that, but what's like a 2-sentence thing, and then we can point them to your books, because you go into that, man, really deep.
Yeah. So, this whole thing started from failures from myself. Is my quarterback throws interception throws the post, and he comes to the sideline and, why'd you throw the post? He said it was open. I say, no, it wasn't. And so here we are having an argument with a 16-year-old on who was right. And so what I self-discovered in that moment was, in the absence of clear frames of reference and a language to perceive the reality of what just occurred the same, then my quarterback's right, because he has the ball in his hands. The day and age of, me being right just because I'm my coach is over. I mean, that doesn't work anymore. And so I needed to find, a language and a lens of leverage to help build a bridge where we could perceive space the same. And what I found is, in the research of linguistics and businesses, I mean, this happens all the time, is people perceive, I mean, we're having it now with, COVID and vaccines. It's different beliefs of what reality is, because our frames of reference are not the same. And so in football, how do we get our quarterbacks and our coaches the ability to read the reality of what just occurred the same way? And that's what capology is about. And it's basically a way to build a spatial awareness for your quarterback. CAP stands for coverage, alignment, and personnel. And so what we're looking for is just a language to code the dominant defender, the dominant position of a defender in space. Is he in the way of the route? The angle of the hips is a big indicator on the space he can close upon. And then I think the biggest thing that has helped me and has helped our quarterbacks and other coaches and quarterbacks is having a language and having a process to break down film and measure the personnel. That's the P and cap, the personnel ability of defenders. What is the threshold that defensive back can overcome? I mean, that's very important to know before you let go of that route. And a lot of this is front loaded before you go into a game. You're going to know kind of what's the threshold that nickel player can overcome on throwing the quick out. Can he close that 4-yard space and undercut the quick out, or can he not? And film study in this process is going to help you understand that. So I think that's all. The game football is about space. The offense wants to create space. The defense wants to take it away. So capped is our brevity code word that the defense is trying to use to take space away. We want to uncap space, and how we talk about it, how we visualize it, how we perceive it is all in the book.
Okay. And Kurt, I want to know what your thought and philosophy is when you're teaching your quarterbacks, like, hey, don't go here, go to the next one in progression.
Yeah. I mean, I think, it can start with, and it can start two different ways. I think the two key components are, again, understanding who you're reading and their movement. Their movement, can quickly dictate whether I can stay on a route or I need to get to the next route. And the other thing is what I, talked about, earlier, taking your quarterback and teaching them timing. To me, everything is based on timing. The reason I tell my receivers to run certain routes and to be in certain places is because of timing. And so I'm always trying to work my quarterbacks to understand the timing of when this route is open. And if you're not throwing that ball on that timing, we need to move to the next guy. We need to move to our check down. So we're always trying to tie the feet to the routes. So they're building that clock in their head and they're understanding, okay, the timing of this is off, get somewhere else. So between that combination of defenders that I'm reading, them saying, okay, they're in this leverage, I'm not going to have that throw, move to the next guy. Second one is, hey, I'm dropping back. Something happened. My receiver got knocked down. It's not playing out. I'm not getting as quick as read as I want. I feel that clock going off. Boom. Now I'm to the next guy, and we've got to move through our progressions.
Okay. Heck yeah. I freaking love that. And again, guys, I can't say this enough. Both of their courses, the QB Confidential and the Run R4 system, in the description, in the comments somewhere in the chat. If you have any questions, put them in the chat. All right. So I want to know, what do y'all do? Because this is something I need to get better at the end of the season to prepare for the next season. Kurt, do you sit down, have kind of an exit interview with your quarterback and see what works or what didn't? Do you just tell them to go on and then you sit there yourself and try to figure it out? What's your thought process at the end of the year? A
lot of it, again, depends on where the kid is and what the kid wants to get out of it. Is his long-term goal to play at the next level, to play at the highest level? Or is his goal to come out for football and to enjoy the heck out of it and then move to basketball and then move to baseball? And that to me dictates a lot, is knowing my player and what they're in it for. That sometimes, again, I don't get all hung up with winning and losing. I want to help my kids have the experience that they want to have, whatever that is. And so some guys I'm going to coach more than I coach other guys. I'm going to coach them harder. Or I'm going to, hey, you want to come over and work extra because I know what they're in it for. Other guys, it's more just, hey, how can I create a fun experience for that guy? So at the end of the year, a lot of that is going to depend on what they want to be, what they are, what year they are, things that I see. But I'm trying to do, again, those exit interviews, I'm trying to do that stuff all year long. I'm not worried about coming to the end of the season and then hitting on all these things. Hey, you need to work on that, or you need to do this, or what. I'm trying to talk to my guys all year long. Like, okay, what's working? What drills do you like the best? Okay, this is what you need to work on. So they're leaving with that sort of stuff and they can move on. I look at high school a little bit different than I think I would college or professionally, knowing that these guys are in it for that purpose. High school, it really depends, but more of it, I'm just like, hey, when I've got them, I'm going to work them and I'm going to teach them and do the best. And if they want more from me, I tell them, come to me. I'm not going to try to harp on you to be something I want you to be if that's not what you want to be.
Okay. I like that. I'm writing that down right now. Dub, what about you? Well, what's your thought process after the end of the year?
Well, we're gonna, go through and identify, what he did well, what he needs to work on. But I mean, we're gonna meet and find out, what are your goals for next season? Where do you want to be? How can I help you? Most of our guys play other sports, so after the exit interview, I don't see them for 3 or 4 months until they get done with baseball. So we'll start a quarterback school in the off season, and we had to actually move that online for those guys, and so they'll have a list of things they have to get done before the season hits. But really, it's just, where do you want to go? What are your goals? Do you want to play in college? If you don't, fine. But here's where the areas we need to improve. Here's a plan of improvement for that. Here's how we're going to get it better with that, and just kind of go from there. But it's a really, like Kurt said, it's something that is not just done at the end of the season. I think it's a constant relationship and a constant process. You really don't need to have that meeting in the year, because you're pretty tight with your quarterbacks. I mean, they're like family. So you don't need to have this, this call to meeting, really.
Yeah, it really is like your second son or your son away from home or whatever. So I'm glad y'all said that. I want to know y'all's two. If that coach just came in, I want to bond with my quarterback. Dub, what's the one thing I can do to like start that bond with my quarterback and let them know, hey, I'm here for you. I'm in your corner. Let's do this thing together. What's
your story? I mean, just, it's, I don't know. Let's go out and let's go do something. Let's go eat. Let's go to, play golf, whatever. I mean, whatever you want to do. What do you like to do? Let's go hang out, and let's not talk about football, and just get to know the person, I think. And the tough stuff is you got to spend time. It takes time to do that. And it's not there's no magic recipe. There's no, specific way. You just got to find the time off the field to be with your guy. And if you can do that, you're going to create those bonds. But really be interested in who he is outside of football. I care more about you as a player, as a person, than a player. Okay. And Kurt, what about you?
Yeah, I think that's great. And on the flip side, I try to let them know who I am too. Is that, you come in and you're the head coach, or maybe in my situation, I'm NFL guy that played a long time, blah, blah, blah. I try to endear myself to them by just engaging in the things that they're engaging in, laughing with them, joking with them, having a good time, jumping in there and running a route against a kid, or pressing a kid up, and just those kind of fun interactions to me breaks down that barrier of coach player. And now they see you as somebody that's an advocate of theirs, somebody that's in their corner, somebody that wants them to be successful. And those are the kind of things that I do. I'm always trying to give my quarterback specifically, but really all my players, input. I want them to take ownership of what we're doing. It's not about me. It's never been about me. And I know I've got that, that benefit with some of my past, that I'm coaching high school football for the sole purpose of helping whoever it is get better. That I'm not, the wins and losses, I'm not a head coach. So wins and losses, and, I know the pressure to win and all of that stuff. I don't have to deal with that stuff. So I'm always trying to get them to take ownership. Bring me a couple plays you see every week, against the teams that we're playing. Let me try to put that in. I tell my guys, hey, create a couple trick plays for me. If they're good, maybe we'll run them in practice and we'll run them in a game. But I think things like that break down that, that barrier between coach and player is what I'm always trying to do. So, man, they just see me as an extension of the team, and we're all in this together, and they can joke with me and we can have a good time. And now they're much more open to share whatever, even if it's something that I can do better, or, something that happened at home, and those kinds of things, I think are so important to be able to give these kids the kind of experience they want.
Okay. Those are great answers right there. I'm writing those down. And look, I'm going to be completely honest. I want to end it right there, because I know a lot of people were coming. They wanted to freaking see a fight. I know that y'all are awesome, and thank you for being here. Also, it is my wife. Dude, I've had so many people, I don't know about y'all, DM me like, hey, ask these loaded questions to see these two. And I told them, shut up, man. I just want to learn from these two guys, because I respect the hell out of both of y'all. And I am trying. So my wife came in a couple of times to give me some. It's her birthday, by the way. So shout out, baby, for letting me do this. But she was like, she texted me. She goes, "Why are you so serious?" I'm like, I'm trying not to grin so hard, because I'm fanboying out with both of y'all. So I just want to thank y'all again for being here and actually talking about this, guys. Coaches, their stuff's in the bottom. It's unbelievable. That's all.
Is there any more questions? I got time.
And I honestly think,
if there's more questions, I'd be happy to answer. I don't know, Coach Dub.
Yeah, I'm good.
Has to run or not, but I'm happy to answer some more. Yes. I mean, we don't get this opportunity very often, and I love hearing Coach talk about his perspective as well.
Okay,
I was gonna say, Kurt. Just I think you know, one of the things that I struggled, you know, with when I early on coaching, it was about me, and my quarterback would make a mistake, and you're making me look bad, you know, and my coaching style, I would treat him, whether consciously or subconsciously, you know, I'd come down pretty hard, but I had to do some soul searching early on in my career because, you know, I wanted to be this hotshot offensive coordinator, quarterback coach guy, but because, you know, it was about me, and you know, I almost ruined a kid. And I think if coaches were honest with themselves, that's a battle we all have, right? I mean, we all want to be great. We all have an ego, but I think, you know, that constant reminder, you know, you said it, you know, it's not about me. It's something I have to keep on my, you know, my mirror in the mornings because, you know, man, that kid's the one in the fire taking the heat, and I got to be there for him. And so I think that's something that's an easy trap to fall into. And doesn't matter how long you've been coaching, you can always fall back into it. But I think when you said that, that's something that resonated with me that I just think that I think other coaches need to hear.
And I think it can go even bigger than that, Coach, too, is just this idea that, you know, this is high school football. And the idea is you got some kids that are coming out so they can wear a jersey on Friday nights. There's other kids that, hey, all my buddies are playing. I want to go out and play football because all my buddies are playing. Not everybody is in this. And again, not that everybody doesn't want to win a state championship or whatever, but, you know, even our schools, you know, it becomes so much about winning and what's your record, and the coach can't stay if my kids have a great experience and we go 0-9, you can keep that coach for the next 20 years, because that to me is what high school football is all about. But it's easy because, you know, Coach, hey, man, if I don't win this many games or whatever, I might not have a job. So it's easy to get caught up in those kind of perspectives because it does become about the coaches to some degree and them moving up. And that's why I've always said that, you know, that's the greatest blessing for me is I'm kind of a part-time coach. You know, I'm not in it. It's not my job. It's not something that's going to determine whether I'm successful or not, is how many games I win or you know, how many quarterbacks go to college. And it helps me change that perspective, which is really hard for guys that is their profession. And that's what they're all about. And that's what they want to do. It's a really tough balance, but I think sometimes it would help if the forces outside of the football staff or the football team would loosen those reins and say, hey, you're here to make sure that every kid that plays high school football has the kind of experience that he wants, not just to win championships or to win this many games every year or to beat our rival. Man, I think we lose track of that too often in high school football.
I agree. And yeah. Okay, so since we're taking questions, this is actually one because Kurt, I know, and this is recruiting. I know you were going through that with your son and everything. When should a quarterback start competing in camps to get notoriety from colleges? What are your Kurt? What's your thoughts on that? And then I'll ask Doug.
I'm probably not the right one to ask when it comes to recruiting. I'm not a fan of how recruiting is done. I feel like, once again, it's less about the kids and it's more about the organizations and the colleges. And I just think that's a disservice, you know, like, and so I don't know the answer to that. I mean, when I was growing up, you know, I never went to a football camp my entire life. You know, there wasn't recruiting services that were telling me how many stars I was or wasn't. There wasn't social media where I got to see every crosstown kid and all his scholarships and compare myself and say, oh, I'm better than he is. And there wasn't all of that stuff. So I was playing because I loved the game. And, you know, to me, the part about recruiting is that it just, I think it dampers, you know, so many of these kids' experience with college football or the recruiting process or what they want to do, because it's just, you know, to me, it's out of whack in a lot of different regards. And I'm just going to, you know, give you an example is, you know, my son was offered a scholarship, and I know colleges are going to offer scholarships at different positions to numerous guys. I get it. And so one of those scholarships, another kid took the scholarship before my son was able to take it, which, again, I get that. I understand it. But he never heard from the school, never heard from any of the coaches. And, here's a 17-year-old kid that's trying to navigate his life and wants to play college football and wants to be excited about the process. And you never hear from the school again. You never hear from these coaches. They never, call you and encourage you or say, hey, I'm sorry, this didn't work out, but whatever. And, they leave and, they're frustrated. We went to some of those camps this year. And, I think it's important to understand when you go to, one of these camps that all of these kids are trying to showcase their skills for these coaches. And so I'm all for really, really good coaching. So I have no problem if a quarterback coach comes to my son and he's got 10, 15 minutes to work with my son and say, hey, I saw this. I think you can do better at this. Let's spend 10 or 15 minutes doing it. But then you go to some of these camps where these kids get to throw 15, 20 balls because there's so many kids there. And I've seen some coaches come up and, on the one rep that these kids have, go, here, change your feet and do this, or try to do this with your arm. And the kid doesn't know what he's doing and he makes a bad throw. And all these coaches see that and now they move on. And again, there's a lot of factors to it, but look at it from the standpoint that this kid, this is one shot. Take him after the camp when you have time and coach him if you don't have time to truly coach him on certain things. And so those are just a couple examples, again, that I've seen, that it's just like, I just feel like it's about other things than just the kids sometimes. And it frustrates me because, again, I want everybody to succeed. I want everybody to put their best foot forward. I want everybody to consider the kids in the recruiting process. And so I don't have the answer for what's the best camp and when you start and how you're supposed to do it and how to have the best experience, because I haven't had the best experience through a lot of the recruiting process, and I wish we could figure out ways to do it better.
Okay. Very valid, because I could sense that frustration on your Twitter feed.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's a couple times. And again, it's the frustration, and sometimes it lends itself because, it's my kid that's going through it. But it's just the big picture of just, I want to be able as a coach to step back sometimes and go, okay, what's in the best interest of this kid here? Not, can I do something that, that like Coach Dub was saying, can I teach him something that in the moment he, leaves and thinks I'm a better coach? I want to consider what is best for this 17-year-old kid in this moment as a coach, as a recruiter, whatever that may be. And when we don't do that, I just think we're doing a disservice to these kids, and we're giving them a negative perception of this whole thing. And it beats them up, and they get frustrated, and they leave a camp all upset because coach asked them to do this, and I wasn't comfortable, and I was in my head, and I didn't put my best foot forward. And so now, here's one of my 4 camps, and I screwed it up. Those are the kind of things that I want us all to consider when we're in the leadership roles. And we've got these 17-year-old, 16-year-old kids that are trying to shape their future and want to have a great experience. And sometimes we muck it up and we get in the way and we ruin that experience for them. And I wish we could do it better and figure out ways to do it better.
Okay. Great set, man. Dub, what about you?
Well, I think the first thing is that mistake a lot of people make is they go to these camps and they're not ready. I mean, you got to make sure you can make the throws. I mean, you got to make sure mechanics are dialed in. I see, a ton of quarterbacks, they're freshmen, 8th grade year, ninth, sophomore, whatever. They're going into all these, Power 5 schools, and you're throwing hitch routes in the dirt, or they weigh 130 pounds. I mean, you got to kind of pass the eye test. You got to be able to make the throws. So I would make sure I've focused on my development before I focus on exposure, I guess is some good advice for some of these guys. I would make sure my kid is ready to get on a whiteboard and talk football. I mean, typically the things how those go, if you can make the throws at camp and you're making the throws and they like the way you look, you pass the eye test, they're going to call you into their office and just talk, and they're going to get you on a board. They're going to say, hey, drop your favorite cover 2 beater. Take me through it. And a lot of kids that I've known that have done that, they're not ready for that moment. They think they know ball, but they never really spent time being on the board, talking through it, looking confident. So I think that's some simple things you can make sure your son's ready to do if, in fact, he can check off the throws, on the checklist and pass the eye test physically. I think it's the mental side he needs to be ready for.
Okay.
Something else that I would say too, just that is understand, and I'm speaking specifically for quarterbacks, but this can obviously speak for different guys, is also to understand, the kind of player that you are. So again, I'll use my son as an example that, my son's not a kid he's not 6'6". He's not a guy that's going to throw the ball 80 yards. So he's not necessarily going to wow you with the physicality. And so, sometimes when you go to these bigger camps and there's a bunch of coaches there, what you realize is you're going to get 20, 25 throws that you almost need to wow somebody, with the physicality. Whereas my son, if he goes somewhere else to another camp where he's going to be one of a few, he's going to get to throw more balls. These coaches are going to get a chance to see him actually play the game. That's where he's going to excel more than a place where it's about, can you make that, you might hit the back wall with a throw and everybody's going, ooh, wow. And he grabs somebody's attention. That's not what my son's going to do. So a lot of what we learned through this process was, what's the right kind of camp to go to? What's the right situation for me to excel based on what I bring to the table and who I am as a player? I think can become really, really important in this process as coaches are listening to this, helping to give advice to go, just know, my son was not going to walk into a room and wow somebody with all these other big kids there, but he knows how to throw a football and he's going to complete more balls than somebody else. But that doesn't always wow somebody because a coach isn't watching every throw at some of these mega camps. So I think a lot of it can really depend on knowing who you are as a player and knowing what gives you the best chance to be seen and to be recruited based on those skills.
Okay. Awesome. And I agree, Daniel. Thanks for doing this, coaches. Pure gold. I can't tell y'all enough. Thank y'all so much. Safi wants to know, and Kurt, I want to go with you on this one first. What are your key coaching points on play action pass, bootleg, and sprint out, and the main differences of this type of play under center and from shotgun?
Well, just like everything else, it's always going to start with technique. Is as we're moving and as we're changing different things, always trying to get back to that fundamental base of what the core to throw a football is. And so, those are things that I'm always trying to work on if we're going to become a bootleg or sprint out team, is making sure I get my body back in a position to give myself a chance to succeed. And so, there's lots of little teaching points about, the ability to get depth, because depth as a quarterback, when you're sprinting out or moving, you get depth. It forces you to have to turn your body and get reconnected to the position of where you want to throw and to attack a throw. The less depth we get, the more we're on an angle, the harder it is to get turned and attack that throw. So, those are some of the things that I'm teaching, getting the head around, on our bootlegs, being able to see some of the things and that depth and that timing and that spacing to connect with my eyes becomes extremely important as well. But, I would just say that the biggest coaching point for me is the ability for those guys to take the right depth course on those types of throws. So it gives them the best opportunity to get as much of their body as possible attacking their target, because that's going to make them most successful.
Okay. And what about you, Dub?
Well, on the bootleg, I think we spend it's all about the play action mechanics. The set, show, snap, sell are the four words that we use to code the different movements of the hands, and making sure our quarterbacks are disciplined with those same actions on the run as so we can set up the actual bootleg calls. So we spend a lot of time with our kids all the way down to our youth level in our program of really emphasizing that set, show, snap, sell. And bootleg becomes a very dangerous weapon when your quarterback can learn to lull the defense to sleep with those same mechanics, snapping the head and hand like a magician. Those quick snap movements of the head and hand after the running back goes through the hole, hiding the ball in the hip flexor across your body so the backside defensive end can't see it, not opening your shoulders too early. Really selling that fake is critical for bootlegs. And then I think also teaching the timeline on bootlegs. There is a timeline on sprint out and bootlegs that your quarterback needs to have an awareness and when those routes break. And so we time it out, as we come out of the fake, the third step in the ground, like say we're going to the right, that's the rhythm phase. The fifth step is the read phase. And then the seventh step is the rush phase. If we've hit our seventh step on that sprint out or that bootleg action, haven't thrown the ball, we need to run. And then the final thing on bootleg is we should never take a sack on boot. Our quarterback, we always have some sort of pin flat or strike route coming across. Like, it should be the safest, the best play, the best pass we can call, because at worst, we're going to be able to throw a ball in the vicinity of that flat player in the dirt at least, and live to play another down at 2nd and 10. And so that's another thing that our quarterbacks have awareness of is we never take a sack on boot. We always know where that outlet, that flat is. And if worse, we're trying to change our arm angle and throwing it in the dirt if we can't get it to him, versus that pressure in the face.
Okay. I like that. Now, if y'all had to put both of y'all, if you had to choose one, would you rather have under center boot or shotgun boot? Because I know some teams do the boot out of the shotgun and under center. Which ones are y'all's favorite?
You're talking a naked bootleg?
Yes.
I'll take it under center all day long. Because the way we teach it in shotgun, I think it's really hard, because the first part of it, specifically if you're not reading it, if you're reading it and you're reading the defensive end and you have that ability, I don't mind the fake being in front of you. But the problem is you can't hide the football. If it's a naked bootleg and you've got the guy coming across you in the shotgun, the ball's right there. I mean, it's right in their face and they can see it. And back to my point, what's really, really hard for a quarterback when they're making the fake in front of them and then trying to boot out that same direction, it's really hard to get depth. You're making that fake, the guy's right in your face. It's hard to get that depth step. So a lot of times if I do it out of shotgun, I allow my quarterback to ride it across the ball, and then they're going to spin and roll out like they would under center in their naked bootleg. So now I can get depth, I can hide the football a little bit better, and I can get more of that ride fake in that position away from that backside defensive end that I'm not going to get by just riding it right in front of me and turning right into it.
I like that. I'm totally stealing that, by the way. I appreciate that. What about you, Dub?
Yeah, for me, it's under center as well. I think, there's so many benefits of under center that a lot of teams are missing out on. And I think, like Kurt talked about earlier, for our quarterbacks, when we start out, everybody wants to be in the shotgun. It's so much more comfortable back there throwing scale and shotgun. But you have to earn the right to get in gun for us. I mean, we're going to start under center drops day one. You have to be able to get the timing down in under center. You have to get your play action mechanics down in under center. Under center bootleg fake is much easier because you can hide the ball. If we go shotgun, we're going to work bootleg more off our pistol run game so we can still get that same type of action. So if I'm going to do offset boot fakes, it's going to be some sort of boot pin concept where we're going to pin that end and he's not naked, and that allows us to really seal that C-gap threat. So I would go pistol more if I'm in the gun, or boot pin from offset, but under center is preferred.
Okay. I have another question from Coach. Dub, I want to go with you first. Since Kurt went last. How much flexibility do you give your quarterbacks in pass pro, and how does it affect the pass scheme?
Well, it really depends on your kid. I've had to start a couple sophomores throughout my career, and so when you got a sophomore, you really got to kind of insulate them early, and you got to bring them along, at whatever pace he can do. So again, it's really based on the kid. We got a returning starter that's coming back this year. That's going to be a junior, so he's a very sharp kid. So we're going to put more on his plate. So I think it's really about the mental makeup of your kid and the experience level he has. We run, full slide protection. We'll run 2-jet, 3-jet. We'll bob it on some certain ob fronts. So we have the ability to mix it up based on, the concept that we're running and then the teams that we're facing. We do a lot of our quarterback overing a protection, putting the slide another direction. If we're playing like a zone blitz team, and maybe they're bringing it from the field and we've got the slide into the boundary. So, we can simply over that. That's pretty simple to do for a kid. And then in our 2-jet, 3-jet, we can over that as well. We just got to make sure that we know where our hots are if we over it, and we have a hot that we can throw if that particular backer comes. So that's some things that we'll do just based on the experience level of our kid.
Okay. And what about you, Kurt? Do you give your quarterback the ability to make checks and everything like that?
Not protection checks.
Okay.
We don't worry about that. I leave that on me or the offense coordinator and our play calling to deal with that if we're seeing a team that's creating a number of hots for us. I just realized in high school football, based on what our scheme is and how we like to play the game, that we don't need to spend that much time on it because we're not seeing that many situations that play into it creating negative plays because because the free guy came and blitzed us. And so we spend our time. I mean, I do give my quarterbacks the ability to, check run plays, to go from run to pass plays based on different things. But as far as pass protections at that level, I just haven't seen it be a need where I have to have my guy think, not only him, because a lot of times our quarterbacks can think that, but having to change everybody to different things and to different guys, we just try to eliminate that and keep it as simple as possible.
Okay, good stuff. Kurt, this is for you because you're talking about, coaches and parents have to think about it like it's for the kids and stop getting out of the win losses. Coach Cleveland wanted to know, how do you deal with parents who are more concerned about winning than the kids? Is there a way, and if you have this, please package it up. This is $1 billion deal right here.
Yeah.
Company. How do you get that across to your parents that, hey, there are things that are bigger than the wins?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the wrong person to ask because I would say be an assistant coach. That's just my deal, is that the head coaches have to handle that. And, I don't know the right way to deal with it, because you see, these parents all the time, and I see emails all the time that they're just, unfortunately unaware of really what's going on with their kid or where he stacks up or how the team and the situation is played out. And it's really hard, it's really hard to be able to do that. To me, I just try to deal with it as honestly as I possibly can. And I tell the parents that this is why I'm here and this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to continue to support your son. I'm going to continue to coach your son. And, we're going to talk about it as a staff and play the guys that we feel like have put in the time or committed to it or are going to give us, give everybody a chance to be able to be successful in whatever way that is. And, again, I'm fortunate that I don't have to have those long drawn out conversations with parents on some of those things because I just want to be there to coach the kids and to give them a great experience. So those are the things that I do when parents do talk to me, but I just haven't had that experience as much as some guys that have been head coaches.
Okay. What about you, Dub? Because I know you deal with parents. You're twofold. You're like a glutton for punishment at the high school level and the camps that you run. You have parents there and everything like that. How do you handle that with the parents?
It's easy at the camps. You just tell them their son is the best quarterback you've ever seen, right? And then their coach has to deal with it. So I would much prefer to be a camp coach as opposed to an actual high school coach. But I think every parent wants the best 10 players on the team to play in their son, right? And so that's just the perspective they have, and it's just part of the job. And you're going to have to do your best to communicate them, be honest where they're at, and a lot of times they're not going to see it from your lens, and that's just part of the animal with it. And I don't know if there's a cookie cut answer for it, but it's communicating who you are, what you're about, what your standards are, and being honest with the player. I think, I prefer to make sure our coaches, really communicate daily, where each kid is at, in terms of the spectrum of performance and making sure we communicate with the kids. And I encourage the parents to go ask your son what he thinks, or has your son talked to his position coach about, why he's number 2 or why he's not getting reps, and put the onus on the player and make sure he can, take that responsibility and communicate with the assistant coach.
Okay. Good stuff. And yeah, it's as a camp coach, like, yeah, buddy, D1 all the way, go for it. Now,
yeah.
Please don't ask me again. Coach Schiffman, who has his own little hawk chat, he has a question, one for each of y'all. For you, Kurt, he wants to know, do you have fond memories of Fort Madison?
No, I don't. And I think he knows that by asking the question. So we'll just have to leave it right there, I guess.
Okay. All right. And for Dub, have you thought about what play on Thor and Loki yet?
Yeah. So probably mesh to the right and mesh to the left.
Stop it. I'm going to cut that
out. We got Kurt on here. Hey, Kurt, let's talk about mesh and why we do not like that play.
Can we please? Oh my gosh, we could talk forever. It's not in my playbook.
All right, why is that? Because I don't know if you know this. That is Dub's favorite play. Like, no. If you say Dub, you can only run one play.
Well, again, I think it's a relative term. Is that, of course, the actual mesh concept of two guys crossing and specifically against man coverage is a no-brainer. I mean, everybody wants that. Everybody's going to have it. I just don't think it's necessarily a great play against zone coverages. And I think there's nuances that you can put in it that make it better. But, you know, I'm also one of those guys, and we all know Bill Wallace and Joe Montana. I'm not a big drive guy because I believe those two concepts send three different guys to three different zones, and usually three different zones that are going to be covered by a defense, because you're always going to have two outside backers and an inside backer in every zone. And so, yes, I understand the point that we can beat that zone defender by sitting the shallow down and hitting him on the inside. I get that. But to me, I'm much more of a guy that I don't want to have to beat guys with throws. I want to have plays designed that will attack one guy and put him in a bind. So we're always going to have success, against those coverages. And I don't think that play does it. And again, nuances, and I understand nuances of it. And there's things that I can do with the strict mesh concept that I really, really like. But the traditional mesh concept, I'm not a big fan of.
Dub, please tell Kurt why he's wrong and why it's your favorite play of all time.
No, I think that, when I wanted to be in the Cool Kids Club when I first started coaching, and I tried to run mesh, and I'm like just getting destroyed because we're trying to run it. And what I learned on early as a coach is, there's certain schemes that are designed for certain things. And I love mesh versus man, but it's, in the principle of design, it's not designed for zone. Can you make it work? Yes, but it's an extremely expensive play. And I don't want to have to spend the time to get good at that and miss out on other things I feel are higher percentage and much simpler. And then every year I'm not going to have that quarterback that's athletic enough. You have to have an athletic quarterback to run mesh exclusively, in my opinion, because he's going to have to buy time. I mean, the time it takes for those crossers, and he's going to have to, get out of bad situations, because protection is just not going to hold up for more than 3 seconds to let those crossers develop. But I do think Lincoln Riley does some good things with it. He structurally uses it kind of as more of a check down on some things, it seems like, and he has some unique ways. So I think there's some things on third down where it can be, but I think, you have the quarterback that can buy time. And is that who you are? I think if that's who you are, you can make it work. It's just, for me, in the high school level, there's much more simpler throws and concepts I could run that I can do in less amount of time is all.
And I mean, for us, I mean, I don't see man-to-man very often in high school football. We don't have a lot of teams that'll go a high percentage of man against us. We're going to see mostly zone. So again, like Coach said, like I said, to me, it's not a zone beater, even though I know it can beat zone. It's not, it's not great against that. And it's hard for my quarterback to be able to understand the nuances and the timing of beating zone coverages with it as well. So those are my reasons as well.
All right, so what I'm getting is every coach should install it in their playbook right now and use it exclusively.
I have a running folder of mesh. Mesh explosions where it's gone wrong, and I'm gonna have to YouTube it up for Coach Warner there.
You need to.
I probably won't watch it all. Once I see two of them, I'll say, well, yeah, duh, I knew that. I knew that going in. So,
okay, so we've totally crapped on mesh. I want to ask both of y'all, like, what is your favorite play? Like, this is the play that every team should have in their playbook, regardless of what kind of offense they run.
Kurt, you can go first on that.
I mean, what level are we talking about?
Let's say high school.
At the high school level?
At the high school level.
Well, I mean, obviously it becomes simpler. One of my favorite concepts, and it's a little bit off of what you drew up for me the other day, Coach Dub, is that we have a play that we call bullets. And so it's usually it can be run to a 2 receiver side, but usually to a 1 receiver side, where we have a kind of a pivot route. Go to the inside, kind of attack the inside backer, settle for a second, and then pivot and bounce back outside. And then we have our other receiver coming from the backfield, usually running this bullets route. And so to me, it's like a half swing, half flat that turns into a wheel. And it's to me, it's an easy play for the quarterback. It's an easy read for the quarterback. And you get lots of different options on it based on whether you're seeing man or zone coverage. And it's a nice changeup to be able to get the ball out quickly, because it's a throw that you can make right now, almost like a flat throw. It's a throw that you can make up over the top if you're getting defenses to sink and squeeze. But that's a favorite one of mine. But to me, I mean, at the high school level, I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible. I mean, slant flat, curl flat. I mean, those are things to me that are staples. A couple cover two beaters that we've got in. So I don't know if I've got necessarily a favorite play at high school, because for me they're so simple that I want more nuances. I want more things that I can read and see. But to me at the high school level, it's how simple can I make it for my quarterbacks to get a singular read and get the ball out of their hands and let our playmakers make plays.
Okay. What about you, Dub?
I think, foundationally for me, I really like spacing variations or stick. It's just, high percentage and understanding, how to progress through that and putting pressure on interior guys. So I think, that's probably my favorite, because there's all kinds of ancillary tags you can put on the back, or you can get matchups with the X receiver on an isolation and some things like that. So I think if I only had a choice, it'd be one of those two plays to at least start out or be as a foundational. Just because it's high percentage and there's other things you can attach to it to build some complexity.
Okay. Good question. I still think it should be mesh. That should have been y'all's answer for that question.
That could be your answer.
It's not.
You put that sucker in.
I'm gonna be honest. I put it in, and every time I always take it out because, like y'all said, it just, I call it darn man. That's pretty much it. It's gold line exclusive, and y'all are making me out myself. Coach, I'm going to be completely honest. I don't know how to say your last name. I'm a math teacher, so please forgive me. But how many passing concepts, plays do you have in your playbook, and how many do you go into each game with? Dub, I'm gonna ask you first, since Kurt went first on that last one.
Well, we got a lot of plays in our playbook, and the playbook is really just a library for me. And each year we're going to kind of decide based on what our quarterbacks route range are, what's the vertical value of our receivers, what's our skill set, is going to determine, what we pull from that playbook year in and year out. I think so. I really can't give a number, because that's my off season, job, is to stay up on current trends, add new things, tweak things. In terms of going into a game, though, I think one of the things we've done is really scaled down the last couple of years, and we're really trying to identify the 3 to 4 concepts that we feel are going to give us the best answers versus the coverage we're seeing. But it's more about tags off those base concepts or different route attachments, maybe to a backside, to give us the answers we need. And I feel what it does is it allows our quarterback to really understand the bigger picture and to adapt to different looks in a game without being overloaded with like 10 or 12 plays like I used to bring in. And so I think, having, the simplicity with reduced amount of concepts, but still get versatility with tags or different attachments is something that's really benefited us.
Okay. And what about you, Kurt? Do you have a set?
I would say we probably have around 35 concepts in our playbook on a normal basis. And so we teach it half field. So it isn't one of those where we have a concept and you got to learn across the board and then you got to be able to flip it. We learn half field concepts. So primarily 2-man routes with the third guy having, limited options in what he can do. So we keep that as simple as possible. And that allows us to be able to connect, so like Coach Dub said, it's that, you got your checklist there and we go into a game and we've got the ability to connect any of our concepts, together. And that to me is what I like, is that flexibility of our base concepts to be able to put 2 of them together, to separate them. So I'm not just stuck on, this is always going to be this on the backside and this on the front side. We give our quarterbacks the best chance to succeed. But I tell you what, I always tell people I try to coach to the smartest guy in the room. And so what I mean by that is I don't ever sell my guys short that they can't do something. I go in every season saying, I believe these guys can do it. We go in every week, and if I'm watching film and I think there's a particular play concept that'd be really good against that team, I'm bringing it to my guys even though we've never run it before. We might never run it again, and I'll put in 4 or 5 new concepts every single week if I think it can be successful for us. And I believe my guys can do it. And if they can't do it, we'll pull back and we won't run them. But I'm telling my guys that I'm going to coach to the smartest guy, and I'm going to push you guys to see what you're capable of. And then we'll pull back and we'll do our job when you're not capable of it. But I think these high school kids are extremely intelligent, and they can do a lot more than we often give them credit for. And I think they enjoy that. That's one thing I enjoy as a coach. I enjoy coming up with a new play and having it work. I enjoy when my players come up with a play and they give it to me and I like it, or we make an adjustment and we can run it in a game and they take ownership of it. When we give them a couple new plays that we just put in and we can watch film and go, man, guys, we put this in on Thursday and Friday night you guys executed this and it was successful. That does something for my players and the ownership of it. And so I don't know if I have an exact number of plays, but I am always looking to add or adjust or do things with my guys, and we'll do that. We'll do that every single week.
Okay, good stuff. Coach has another one. In your opinion, what makes the most valuable attribute of being a successful quarterback at the high school or college level?
I mean, yeah, this is kind of twofold. Most valuable attribute is the ability to lead. And that means a lot of different things. That can mean, a million different things. But I mean, if there's one attribute, it's the ability to lead guys. It's ability to get in the huddle and have control. It's the ability to have your team believing that when you have the ball in your hands, you're going to be successful no matter what. It's when somebody's down to be able to go lift them up and encourage them and lead in the classroom. And I mean, that to me is the greatest attribute. When you're talking about just big picture, if you're talking about physically, what is the greatest attribute? To me, it's always about decision making. I mean, the quarterback position is about the ability to make good decisions for your team, to protect the football, to not put your team in harm's way over and over again is, to me, the best physical or, actually playing the quarterback position, the best attribute to have. Okay.
Good stuff. Dub, what about you?
Yeah, decision making under pressure. I mean, the ability to handle pressure and perform under pressure, I think, is, you can have a quarterback that can do a lot of things, but when can he do it when it's crunch time? And I think that's, I have a lot of good guys that are good in the classroom, they're good in scaling 7-on-7, but you throw them out there on Friday night and 10,000 people in the stands, and it's a different animal. So I think that's one of the things, and it's kind of like Kurt said, decision making. I think it's that same thing. under pressure, can I perform?
All right, I'm glad you said that because listen, I'm in South Carolina. I don't play in front of 10,000 people, but I know a lot of people do. A lot of people do. Especially, I mean, y'all two both have this. Exclude the quarterbacks right now. As a coach, how do you prepare yourself to actually call a game in that environment and not you yourself get caught up in the emotion and the crowd and hear it and everything like that? Like, how do you mentally prepare yourself for that?
I mean, for me, I don't worry about any of that. To me, the most fun part of the game is putting your kids in position to succeed every single week. And so for me, I go into the game and I have no preconceived ideas. I won't say no. I mean, obviously we go in with a game plan, but I like to be able to react to what I see in the moment. And so that's one of the reasons I like the flexibility in our playbook, because I can go in thinking a team's going to do this or they're going to be that. But I want to have the ability to react and the ability to, again, give my quarterback and my team the best opportunities to succeed. So, that's kind of how I go into it, is that I love that moment. I look forward to that. And I take a lot of ownership of that. I'm one of those guys, I'll be the first one to say, man, I could have done that better. I should have reacted better in that moment. But that to me is the most like playing the game, is you're out there, you got to, see, react, get your team and your guys in a position to succeed. I love that moment. I relish that moment. And again, I go into it more with an open mind so I can be able to react to what I see.
Okay. Good stuff, man. Learning from the best. What about you, Dub? What do you do? Because I know you've been on the sideline for, is it 6?
Yes.
8 championships. So how do you mentally prepare as a coach for that?
Well, 6, been in 10. So
please forgive me.
No, but I mean, I think it's why we became coaches. It's the closest we'll ever get to playing again. I mean, so we look. It's why we do all the hard work and we put in the time. Those are our moments, and so I enjoy those big games. It's the closest I'll ever get to, like I said, feeling playing again. So it doesn't faze me. I mean, how do you prepare for it? Just like you do as a player. I mean, it's just the mental preparation and really trying to stay one play ahead is critical. Not letting the pressure get to you. not letting a bad play call get to you. It's just the play call, you're just like a quarterback. I think Kurt can speak to that. It's, you're doing all the things you can, but it's harder because you're not the one with the ball in your hand. So, you've put all this, these thoughts and decisions and these actions into a 15 or 16-year-old is a scary thing. It's freaking scary, So, I'm sure Kurt would much rather throw on the helmet and go back out there and, throw the field comeback, right? But,
no doubt.
So that's a little bit, there's a little bit more, nerves and things into it because you ultimately don't have control of the outcome. So I think that's where it's a little different than being a player. If you're a player, it's like, hey, I got this. But, as a coach, not so much.
Yeah. I like that, man. That's good. So, okay. So how do you bounce back? I'm glad you said, I didn't know that 10-1-6, but how do you bounce back from that? Like you won one, how do you not beat yourself up as a coach? Because, the players actually do that. I should have done this or whatever, but you really don't have anybody to talk to kind of like build yourself up if you have a bad game or something like that. What are some ways for you to not get so down on yourself and just go to the next season or the next play, as we tell the kids?
Finding amazing wife. Like seriously, my wife's a rock star, man. She's like my psychologist. There was one particular game a few years ago that I just called an awful game. We lost, and it had serious implications on our playoff. And I thought I was the worst coach in America. I come back home and I'm kicking myself, and I'm horrible at this. Have no idea what I'm doing. And she kind of gives me the what for and kind of pull your bootstraps up and suck it up, big boy, and help me, and she was the one that actually turned on the Strength Finders book that I talked about. And so when I took that test, I was amazed to find out that the top 5 strengths that I have are totally made. I was engineered and created to be in this position I'm at. So it was kind of reaffirming to find out. It gave me a lot of confidence to find out that, everything that I thought I was not, I actually was, and it was a lie I was telling myself. And so I think that Strength Finders deal is something that could really help coaches. And I think having a support structure around you that will be honest with you, that will tell you the truth, and that will be there to give you the tools to help you get better is important.
Yeah. For me, I've never lacked in confidence from that standpoint. Is that, I've lived a long life, and I've played a lot of games, and I've screwed up a lot of times. And like I said earlier, I just know whether you're playing or whether you're coaching, you're never going to coach the perfect game, and you're never going to do it all the time. You're going to have those moments. And that to me is the beauty of sport, is you're going to have those games. You're going to have those times. And every time I go into a game, I feel prepared. I feel like I did the right things. And then sometimes in the moment, it just doesn't work out. You don't see it like you want to. You don't call it like you want to. And you own it. But at the same time, I've never let that go. Oh my gosh, I had one bad game. I threw 5 interceptions. I'm a bad quarterback. I've never worried about that. Same as a coach. You take ownership. You stand in front of your guys and say, hey, you know what? I should have done better. I didn't give you guys the best chance to win. I will be better next week. And when I say that, I believe it. And, and I move forward and I prepare and I do the same things that I've always done and believe and have that confidence. So I think that inner confidence is always key whenever you're putting yourself in a position where you're going to be scrutinized. You're going to be under the lights. The focus is going to be on you, whether the ball's in your hands or whether you're calling plays or whatever. If you don't have that inner confidence, I think it's going to shake you all the time. And I think it's the wrong business to be in.
Okay. Can you build that inner confidence, or is that just something you kind of like have?
No, I think you could build that inner confidence, and it comes from all those things that it takes to be successful. The hard work, the consistency, showing up in practice, the preparation, and then you have to do it. That's the bottom line. It's hard to build inner confidence if you've never done it. If you've never been there, if you're not successful, at times. So again, whether you call that innate or not, it's one of those things where, confidence comes from being successful. We have all seen, arrogant people that aren't successful, but we know true inner confidence comes from, hey, I know I can do this. I've done it, or I will do it, or whatever. And you build off of that. So you got to find ways to be successful, even if it's little successes. It doesn't have to be being in 10 state championships, although that sounds pretty good. That's pretty easy to gauge when you're in 10 state championships. But you find little things that you're successful at, and little things that you build off of, and all those little things, keep entering into that self-confidence. So, you can handle more, and you can deal with those negative moments.
I think it's how you look at failure too. I think failure is feedback, and every great thing that's come out of like a book or whatever, a system, or the better I've done as a coach has come through my failures. So I think if you're open to examining those failures and really looking at them closely and not blaming other people, but what did I do wrong here? How can I get better? How can this make me better? I think it really flips the lens on how you respond to those situations. And I think that's a key trait in a lot of successful people is failure doesn't faze them because they look at it as an opportunity to get feedback to become better.
Yeah. Failing forward is what I try to tell myself when I do something. So yeah, great stuff, man. Travis says, act as if, ultimate mindset changer. I love that. I want to switch gears a little bit. Coach, another coach had it in it. Again, I'm not even going to try to butcher your name. I'm just going to call you Coach HR. I apologize. Watching film with your kids. Kurt, how do you do that? Do you guide them, or do you let them take the lead and talk you through what they're seeing? What's your process when you're watching film with your quarterbacks?
Different times, different ways. It depends on what I'm trying to show them, what specifically we're watching film for. Usually after a game, if we're looking back on their performance, I want them to walk me through it. I want to get a sense of what they're seeing, what they're understanding, what they saw in a moment. And then I want them to take ownership of those things as well. So oftentimes I will have them talk me through it first, and then I'll walk them through, what I'm thinking and how this plays out so we can get better with it. When I'm watching to install things, or we're watching defenses of the other team, oftentimes I will lead that, and I will direct their eyes to where I want them to be and what we're looking at and why we're putting in specific plays. So I'll try to guide them in that and walk them through some of the things we want to do and those keys that I'm always trying to teach them. So I would say it's just different times, different ways. I do want them to lead at times because I think that's an important trait. Sometimes we'll have, guys get up and kind of lead some of our film sessions or our installs on their own, because I want them to be able to do that in front of, teammates and do that in front of their coaches. But it just really depends on what the scenario is specifically.
Okay. Good stuff. And Dub, what about you?
Well, I think it's a lot of the same way. I am more now than I have been in the past of having them lead and trying to unpack what's in their head. We have a process we use. We have frames of reference we use and words we use to code movements and coverages and patterns. And I'm sure everybody has their own language system. But I think it's important to put the clicker in the quarterback's hands and find out how he perceives space and time. And there's different times that you do that. If we're just introducing, a new team, say we just, finished a game on Friday night and the kids come in on Saturday to watch film, we're breaking down the team we're playing the next week. I'm gonna manage more of that meeting and give more of a global look of what the coverages and fronts are. But as we go through the week, I'm gonna put the clicker more in their hands and have them tell me what they're seeing and how they're processing that. And I'm gonna kind of hold their hand. No, this is what that is. It's not this. And then over time, they're going to become, my goal is to make them like a coach. I mean, I want them talking like a coach, seeing the game like a coach. And I think as we get into more of the season, they're running more of that throughout the week, where it's more me, on an introductory setting globally at the beginning.
Okay. Good stuff. I like that. Dub, for you, Coach wants to know, what are some of your favorite concepts to get the running back involved in the passing game?
Yeah, it's the tailback option. I love the ability to, if you study the Saints, Gruden does a great job with it. Kyle Shanahan does a great job. Matt LaFleur, incorporating a tailback on the option route where he can, go weak or to the field. They tied into different concepts, and he can, win on the slant or, foot fire breakout, or he can just hitch up. I think, if you invest a lot of time with getting your running backs to, understand that concept in your quarterback, that's getting your running back matched up on a backer is a good game plan.
And what about you, Kurt?
I think it really just depends on who your running back is and what his capabilities are. Most times for me, I try to keep it as simple as possible with my running back. If I feel like I got an advantage with my running back, I'm simply just trying to get him out in space. And so not asking him to read a whole bunch, just ways that I can get him the ball quickly out there in space going downhill. So, but we have the capabilities of running. If we've got a good running back, I want him to have the capabilities of running every concept in our offense. And so I will adjust him and use him in whatever way, whether it's hitches, slants in the quick game, whether we run him on corner routes and get our advantages that way. But again, for the most part, at the high school level, I'm just a firm believer. If you can get a good player out in space with the ball in his hands, that's better than asking your quarterback to have to throw the ball 20 yards down the field. And so we're trying to create all kinds of easy opportunities for our running back. If we've got a really good running back, man, I just want to get it in his hands because he'll do something with it. And I get away from those 5 or 6 defensive linemen and guys that are in the box. Let me just get him outside the box and get the ball to him.
Okay, good stuff. Had another coach ask, going into the game and actually calling it, what's your play calling philosophy in the beginning? Is it I'm going to call a couple of plays and make the quarterback comfortable before getting into the full playbook, or do you script, or how are y'all doing this starting the game off and trying to get the quarterback to not be so jittery when the game starts off?
I'm always scripting the beginning of the game, and I like to script it with my quarterback to some degree. And so things that we've done throughout the week, asking him what he likes, what his favorites are, for that purpose is that I want him very confident with our first 15 or first 20. I want to try to put him in some situations where I feel we can be successful. And I like getting completions. That's kind of my philosophy going into it in every game is that, again, that doesn't mean we're not going to come out and take a shot or we're not going to run a special early on. But I like to build my script with positive plays specifically for my quarterback that he really likes to get him going early so we can build off of that confidence the rest of the game.
Okay. And what about you, Dub?
Yeah, I think I borrowed from Andrew Coverdale for a lot of those guys listening know who he is, an outstanding coach in Ohio now. He has a like it or love it procedure that he'll take through his quarterbacks. And so we'll script our openers and he'll kind of go through it. And I borrowed that and it's been very effective. And I just want to hear from my guy, do you like this or do you love it? And whatever those that he really loves, we're going to put those in front load, those up top. But it's going to be some high percentage stuff early. We want to get the quarterback to get in a rhythm. And a lot of our stuff we do in the opening script is going to be different looks to try to get a feel of, how they're playing. Are they playing like we anticipated? Are they getting us something different? And but I think having an opening script, whether you get off of it early or you stay on it, I think is critical. I think it's a critical tool to keep you organized and to handle those pressure situations and also give your quarterback a feel of what's coming. I think that's important for that guy to know, hey, I can sit down, can I get that script and visualize these plays and be ready for those as they come.
Okay.
Let me say as well as I like scripting as much for everybody else besides the quarterback as I do it for the quarterback. Now, I want my other guys to understand what we're going to run and what their responsibilities are as well. And so that's another factor that I always factor in is what do my guys do well outside of that, not just what my quarterback does well or what he likes. I like having a script so those guys, everybody can see it a couple days ahead of time. With the teams that I've been on, that's as much of my mindset as it just is about making sure that the quarterback is successful early.
Okay. And when you script, are you scripting to – I know a lot of coaches script to see what the defense is going to do to formations, or are y'all scripting to like, hey, I'm going to get the ball to this guy and this guy and this guy? What's y'all's thought process on the scripting?
Yes and yes for me. So I don't know what I'm going to do, but yes and yes.
Yeah, so I would say same. Absolutely.
It is. It's the same idea is that, I love trying to make sure I can force throws for my quarterback that I know he likes, try to force those things. But at the same time, I know, hey, if I've got a couple playmakers, what are the 2 or 3 things that I know will work and I can get it into their hands and allow them to spark us early is always a factor early in a game.
Okay. I love it. For this one, I'm going to go to you first, Dub. Cody says he's running a spread system. How often do you practice under center mechanics versus schemes? Like I'm going to twist this. Under center, how do you have like a certain amount of plays you're going to run? Like, hey, this week we're going to run this amount of plays under center and this amount from shotgun. Or are you working the under center during practice the whole time, and then that's just like a game time decision? Like, hey, I think maybe we would do better under center now this drive than in the shotgun. Or how do you do that?
Yeah, I think there's not an absolute on this, but I think generally there's going to be a certain package of plays that we're going to run under center. We're in 12 or 21. We'll be more predominantly under center. That's not always the case, but if we're in heavy sets, we'll be more under center. And if we're in more 10, 11 sets, we'll be in shotgun as kind of a starting point. Doesn't mean it's always that way, but that's kind of how we do that based on kind of the personnel packages we're in.
Okay. And what about you, Kurt?
It's for us, it's really been more dictated by the offensive line than anything. When he says practice, I'm always having my guys practice under center. I mean, every time we do routes against air, my quarterbacks are under center. So they're dropping that way. When we practice under center because I think, as Coach Dub talked about a little bit earlier, that there's things that are better being under center. There's things that work better, actions that work better. I think some things are easier on a quarterback with the ball in their hands instead of having to get it in shotgun. But a lot of that's going to be dictated with my situation is just where our offensive line is and, our ability to protect against the defensive front that we're seeing. If we feel comfortable with that, I'd like my quarterback under center a high majority of the time unless we're in strictly passing situations. But I will say most of the teams that I've been on high school wise, we've gravitated more to trying to build more things from shotgun because we haven't been the best up front and being able to dominate and give my quarterback comfort up there.
Okay. Awesome. I love this. All right. Coach wants to know, Kurt, for you, what's more important in your thought process, attacking a defense, the weakness in the defensive scheme, or are you like picking on a person in their personnel? Like, hey, this corner is not as good as everybody else. Let's just pick on him the whole time.
Scheme, always scheme. I want to create things that are scheme based. So we have a chance to be successful based on our scheme. That doesn't mean that we don't say, hey, we're going to run this and we feel like we got a huge advantage over here at the left corner and we're not going to keep doing things within our scheme that attack that. But I am less personnel driven, especially at the high school level, because I think oftentimes when I watch film at the high school level, and I don't know if it's because I'm so used to watching film at other levels, it's hard for me to truly gauge how good a player is until I see him live. Until I see him in person. So I've had times where I think, oh man, I think we have an advantage here. And we go out into the game and I'm like, dang, that guy's pretty good. That guy's not what I thought he was on film. So I don't spend a whole lot of time designing to attack a man. I design to attack a scheme and feel like that's going to make us successful as long as we've got the pieces to be able to run our scheme. So I'm much more heavy on that side than the other.
Okay. And what about you, Dub?
Yeah, I think it's scheme for me, but it's also being able to grade or assess how those players, how good they are within that scheme that we're going to call. So I might be able to run power to a 3 technique and it looks great on a whiteboard, but can we hold that double team and get off to the backside backer on that 3 technique? I mean if he's and be able to watch film and assess that, or if I'm going to an ISO on a wheel linebacker, it looks great. Like you got the B gap, but maybe that Mike's a positive plug guy, and maybe that's a mismatch on my fullback. And so I think there's another layer to when you're scheming, plays for a weakness to a front or a coverage. It's, what's the personnel around that space and how well do they play within that? And that can be kind of a challenge if you don't have a process to grade off film or to grade live, like Kurt was saying in a game. And I think, you need help as a coach. Like what I need more eyes seeing and understanding this than just myself. It's very difficult for me to watch film and grade all 11 guys and do a detailed analysis. So we have a process that we use that all of our coaches can do the same grading process, and we can, break players down into groups and get a pretty good sampling of the ability of players within that scheme, and we can gauge if it's going to hold up or not.
Okay. Good stuff. And what I want to ask y'all this again, this is for me. how are y'all making adjustments at halftime? Like, do you have someone that's keeping track of I know some coaches have coaches upstairs, like keeping track of positive plays and negative plays. And then at halftime, they get rid of all the negatives and just focus on the positive. Do you have another system that you have coaches do so that at halftime you can make the adjustments you need? Or is it kind of like a feel thing for y'all at halftime? Well, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, for me, it's always a feel thing. I mean, I don't worry about all that stuff and the charting and all that stuff. I feel like again, just seeing the game, and I'm always trying to make adjustments. I mean, I'm always trying to feel it out. And again, just like I was saying earlier, we'll put in plays for a particular week. I'll put in 3 or 4 plays at halftime with my guys, just based on what we saw. And if something was a little bit different, they changed up how they were attacking us than what we saw on film. But I would say, yeah, primarily it's more of a feel thing to try to get our scheme in the right place to have success against what we're seeing.
Okay. And what about you, Dub?
Ours is a little bit more detailed. We've got, I mean, there's 13 or 14 coaches on our staff. I mean, we're 6A at school, so we've got the ability to have guys in the booth come down. They've got the kind of the looks drawn up on the whiteboard that we've seen. I know most of us in high school now have the sideline replay. Ron, I think you guys get to use that as well. And so we use the sideline replay just to analyze the looks, what are the mismatches that are causing us problems, or what are the ancillary looks that we weren't anticipating, or things like that. So we'll just go over and just see what's working. We chart and see what plays we're efficient on, and what's our efficiency, and so if we we can simply look at the chart, and for Kurt it's feel. For us it's more of just looking at the numbers and seeing hey, our inside zone we're really efficient on that. We need to go back to that. Outside zone we're not. Let's maybe look at something different. So we just have a little bit more manpower. We can get more in detail.
Okay, awesome stuff. And coaches, again, great freaking questions. If you have any more, put them in the chat.
I'm thinking that you got to get off this call because it's your wife's birthday and you need to get out of here. So I've enjoyed this, and I could probably do it longer with Coach Dub, or we got to do it another time. But your wife's sitting there saying, "It's my birthday, dude. I don't want her mad at me." So I appreciate you having us on. I'm going to cut this off myself.
Okay.
And so Coach Dub, if he stays on, he can be responsible for you missing dinner with your wife on her birthday. But I appreciate it. I had a blast. Appreciate all the coaches and all the questions, but please go get to your wife.
I appreciate it. And thank you for giving me an out, because now I'm going to blame everything on you, Kurt. Coaches, thank y'all much for being here, and I will see y'all next time.